Hey, hi everyone. So a warm welcome to everyone for the Global Summit EA 2021. So this is Mohammed from the organizing team. Before we start, as a part of an organizing team, I would like to thank everyone for your interest and joining in us for a session. So this session is all about the cloud migration using EA Prolaborate and Togaf ADM. So where the deeper insights will be shared by Ramsay Millar, who is our global partner of Sparx Systems. So about Ramsay, he founded his company Integrate IT and became a Sparx System certified global training and consulting partner in the year 2001. So for the past 20 years, Ramsay has carefully guided, migrated, and supported his clients to the leverage to the powers of the enterprise architect. So we feel that this would be a valuable session for you. So and with regards to the session things, we will be muting all the participants throughout the session. And if there is any queries during the session, you are welcome to post it on the chat window so that we will be able to try to cover it up in the QA session at the end. Okay, so even if not, Ramsey will be available in the Teams channel. Okay, so if you want to collaborate and if you want to discuss more about the presentation, you are welcome to do it on the dedicated team channel, which will be posted on the chat box. So, and if you have any difficulties, you will be able to uh, send an email. You can drop an email to registrations@eaglobalsummit.com so that we will be able to help you out in getting things. So that is all pretty much now. And thanks again for your interest. Ramsey, the stage is yours. Let me make you as a presentation. Okay, so yes, you can start now.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here, and really happy to excited about the presentation, and let's get started. So despite what people say, it is not the survival of the fittest or the most intelligent. It's those that adapt to change. And people who adapt to change well and organizations will strive. So in my business, I'm mostly looking at organizational survival, and enterprise architecture is key to that, business leadership. I really want to welcome you all to our global community, nearing 1 million users globally. The brightest group of people I've ever met in my life. Just look at all the speakers that we have, the second year now, and a massive community of people that when they go around the world, we're connected. My view is a little different than other modelers, so I need to give you some context. My view is the entire stakeholder group, not just the programmer, not just the data modeler, not just the project managers, the BAs. I need to get all of them involved, because when Prolaborate, my biggest struggle after 15 years with Sparx was not in the tool. It was on how do you share the assets. And sharing assets and communication is number one. All the diagrams in the world you could put on the wall are useless if people don't read them or understand them or get involved and collaborate and work with them. So when Prolaborate came along about 4 or 5 years ago, I was the first adopter, and it really, I struggled with how to share. There's many ways to do it, but now we have a live way of doing that. So I've been setting up organizations for 5 years with Prolaborate and EA. My company's Integrate IT. I founded it in 2001. I have to thank Jeffrey Sparx for, in 2001, allowing me to be a certified Sparx global partner. I first heard of Sparx when I was teaching in Stockholm, object-oriented programmers in the year 2000. I was in the first wave of object-oriented programmers teaching around the world globally for a few companies, Rational Rose, and then eventually Learning Tree International. And I heard about it in Stockholm, and I was quite impressed because I heard about it from a Rational Rose salesman in Stockholm. I became certified in 1 year, and I never looked back. So at any rate, I want to basically focus in my practice on improving the delivery of architecting digital solutions. And from leadership vision to well-designed code. We have to see the whole thing. My clients are so advanced, it is unbelievable. They're the 10% of the market. I don't have a big marketing budget. I only resonate with people who see where to go. You can't convince stupidity to change, okay? My company offers full services for enterprise architect, from free help desk services to professional services to knowledge management, and mostly training and consulting is our heavyweight work. There's too many slides in this deck to share properly. I did want to give you something that you can download. So on Google Drive, I put in a lot of giveaways and assets. And the course is, this presentation is kind of founded around my very popular course since Togaf Architecture Development for Teams, which I wrote first in 2010 after being certified Togaf 8. I was then certified Togaf 10. And over 15 years earlier, I had actually been involved with two massive transformation projects in the 90s. Nothing has changed much. And I sure could have used Togaf. Togaf is not a foot disease. Togaf is a very simple and clear change machine. Unfortunately, there's over 3,000 pages that people think they have to follow to the T. That's not correct. You need to find the lightest, most agile, lean way through it. Please contact me after the presentation if you have any information you need to know more. Also connect with me on LinkedIn. My practice is I have all digital virtual training that goes on virtual desktops. People buy and download my software and training courses. So the first thing I want to get going here is one last thing I want to say about me, which is not my most popular topic, is that you need context and you need content. This presentation will only be well absorbed if you understand the context of the situation I'm in, and then I can get into the content and the details. All too often, miscommunication happens by things are out of context, not deliberately. Only politicians do that. But normal people don't really pay attention to the theory of context and content. So here's the context really quick. I was very fortunate in my career. In 1967, when I was a young man, too young, I actually went into the headquarters of IBM Edmonton, Canada, and thought, can I get a job programming? Well, they said, Ramsay, it's too late. There's already 200 programmers in the world. You have to try another career. So I went into civil engineering. Many years later, I got involved on help desk with the highway engineering in British Columbia, Canada. And I learned a lot on the help desk. And my bosses, I've had excellent mentors. That's what I want to do, is thank all of the mentors I've had. Basically said, can you take university courses and get in? I started programming Fortran. I think in Fortran arrays. And that's why Sparx, when it came along, was so great. I also had every job in IT. Because it was in the beginning. There were no certifications, you just did the job. So I spent many years as a programmer, then as a systems analyst. There was no such thing as a business analyst. Then on and on and on, I eventually ended up my career in British Columbia, Canada, CIO of tourism, British Columbia. Having said that, only because of the context, because I have a really good vision of the industry. The dynamics of our industry hasn't changed much. The technology has changed rapidly. And of course, there's 600 silver bullets in the last 40 years I've been involved. There is no silver bullet. It's hard work, communication, and people skills that get us ahead. So let's begin. That's the context. Preliminary phase. I was an operations manager carrying a pager. I was a DBA. You know, you get the whole picture. I did it all. So of course, when I retired, I wanted to kind of give back to the industry. So I said, you know, I'm going to try to see if I can build a company and help companies organize around the technology industry, because the technology industry is a massive success and a massive failure. If you look at the failure rates today, and transformations are still at 62%. So we need to do something better. So let's begin by the preliminary phase. You need a line of visibility from the CEO office right to the code. And that's what my CEOs are telling me. CIOs I report to, men are younger than me. They're really bright people, and they've done both jobs, IT and business. So they can't be smoked. You can't sort of smoke them with marketing glitz. They're real people. I need business leaders. I need CIOs. I need enterprise architects. This is just a context. In Togaf, to go into the Togaf world, we developed the architecture vision. We developed the target business architecture. We manage requirements. This is a simple approach. Develop the target information systems, plan opportunities. Most people in the market spend way too much time in the IT section. And with Prolaborate, we can actually, what I call, liberate the communication so that these poor people in IT and the business people can see what's going on. We've had a really rocky time with the battle between business and IT. What I use is Prolaborate Enterprise Architect and Power BI. We need to think of Sparx models as business intelligence generators to make decisions. If I make a business rule decision 1 week, what will be the code effect and the sales effect within 2 weeks? That's where they want to go. They want to have a fully live model. Preliminary phase, this is the Togaf course that I teach, and I train Togaf, hundreds and hundreds of Togaf architects. You learn a lot when you teach. I'm only going to focus on implementing architecture tools and standards and selecting tailor frameworks. So let's cover that. Togaf, again, is not a foot disease. Unfortunately, too many people take it too literally and overdo everything and spend 2 years in preliminary phase, and then they fire them all. How many architecture teams have you heard being fired in the last 5 years? It's unbelievable. Only to start up again and try again. Corporations keep trying over. So I won't go into what Togaf is, but it is really simple. It's clear, and you know, you don't need to study the 3,000 pages. You could most likely teach how to pass the level 2 exam by understanding the method. And that's why I like the certification level 2, is because you understand how it works by doing it. And my courses actually do an iteration of Togaf. Deploying architecture tools, I'm speaking to the converted. You know, we have Prolaborate integrations. The big thing about Prolaborate, beyond the vision, and here's where I want to thank Nizam and his team and the Sparx team for being so brilliant and adapting to the future, which is REST API. If Amazon could do it, every other tool can do it. I also want to thank Jeffrey Sparx for allowing my company to grow so well. I really appreciate the efforts I've followed in my career of Doug Rosenberg and of Phil Chudley, who I met last year online, and he helped me a lot with some of the work I'm going to be sharing with you here. Geert Belkins, one of the most brilliant people in Sparx. Terry Merriman, the best middle modeler in the world. So I've had a lot of support inside our community. We travel together. Sometimes we visit Ian Mitchell in Wales, Terry and I, and Jackie. So what are we doing about tools? So the tools industry is strong. We're a strong group. We stick together. Well, there's different hosting. That's the confusing part. And I want to recommend any architects who are considering thinking about cloud, get and do it tomorrow. You know, buy a tool, any tool, I don't care. I would prefer Sparx, but get and start using the cloud now, because it's a huge learning curve. And there's many myths about what cloud does and doesn't do, and there's many new challenges and problems. So the nice thing about architecture modeling, it's safe. You can get away with these models. You can do them at very low cost within the Sparx ecosystem. Here's a diagram that talks about the deployment. It's written in my in Sparx. I've built meta models for making Sparx easy to learn. I'm looking at the next generation of architects, not the previous generation, and not even the current, well, some of the current generation are adopting these. So I've built an entire MDG over the last 10 years, and it's tight and it's clean, and I use it in all my training. When I do that training, my training reduces by 1 day because people can learn so quickly. The philosophy is make it Visio-like, make it PowerPoint ready, because what does everyone use? 98% of the people in the world are using Visio, spreadsheets, and PowerPoint for architecture. And can we do all that in Sparx? Sure, and we can prove it. The biggest problem we have with Sparx is the huge community of outside people who are not in the model, will never be in the model, disdain the model. They want to have communication. A diagram like this scares them, but to you and I, a certain domain, we like it. Visual modeling, if I can't picture it, I can't understand it. Here's my first Uml tool. I was a systems analyst. This was Uml in whatever year it was. God, I don't want to go back that far. 80 something, 79. That was that was a meta model. That was the meta model. That was Uml. Today we've evolved beyond that so that you can actually configure in software using the profile editor. We can configure a toolkit, and now we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meta models and tools and plugins. That's great. And how do we reduce paper but keep knowledge? How do we keep the knowledge in a model? So visual words and pictures work. Here's Prolaborate. This is a Togaf diagram with EA as your repository. You have the real world. What do you decide to model? What do you want to put through the meat grinder of the metal model? And I'm an old data modeler, so basically I want really good data in my repository. How you set up your repository is really important. So I'm going to just jump in for a minute so this helps. The repository, you can all see my screen, I bet. I hope. Anyway, so the repository structure, as some of the speakers, whoops, what have I done? I see what I've done. Some of the speakers have alluded to, no, that's not what I wanted to do. You move the bar and it goes back. That's crazy. It's very important. My repository structure is based on where are you going? What's your strategic vision? Where are you going? How do you get there as project management? The reason I'm opening this is you're going to see this all in Prolaborate. This is my Prolaborate. This is the database under Prolaborate I'm using. And here's my project, architecture development project. We'll be covering this just to show you the demo that we're going to be going through. And I've got an area here called phase 1, which people are really interested in more, the actual application architecture area. We'll look at all of this a little later. There again, no. Tool. Okay. So Azure Cloud Migration, we got it all there. All of the work is in here. The structure is how do you get there is tactical. So there's, in DODAF, in architecture frameworks, there's always a vision and leadership. There's always how do we get there in military operations, which is what we follow in business models. Set the vision. Elon Musk. You don't have to go very far. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. And operational as-built, very few people deal with because I came out of engineering. This is where all the actual documentation ends up, sorted by capability. So capability is a really good organizing principle. Alphabetic sort is a good organizing principle. Also, I'm really big on reuse catalogs. Why? And we know Sparx is really good at reusing everything. So I think that point's been made, and traceability. And I also built a lot of reuse templates. So in my training courses, what people do is they get a format, they copy and paste, and they start building the workshops in these templates. Now these templates, and I give all this away with my training courses, these templates are modifiable, but they're really based on standards and best practices. Very few of it is Ramsay's way of doing things. I try to reduce that so it's more universal in my business. And then there's a team sandbox for people who want to be in the team. And I've got a few demos set up in here for you a little later. So let's go back. So now you see the underlying structure of what we're going to be playing with. The biggest problem you face in this market, and I thought it was impossible, about 2008, after 8 years of being in Sparx, and you can pretty well tell by somebody's model structure how many years they've been spending in Sparx, how clean it is, how simple it is, how you can communicate, because you could communicate to anyone from India to China to the United States, in the global world we live in. You can never assume, many of us people do design in the US and then the coding is done somewhere else. You have to make these models universal, make them knowledge models. Now, the biggest problem you're facing, oh, not again, I don't like this. This is so sad. Sorry, folks. Biggest problem we're facing is you have hundreds and hundreds of standards, and that's good. They're great. I love them. But they don't harmonize. The BPMN people, they're crazy. They went off in a little silo and created a data store. What the hell's that? It doesn't fit into any other. The good news is that all of these fit together. All of these standards fit together. And they harmonize. So I love to harmonize things. So I found a harmony, and the harmony I found in most of these standards was around the center word in this. All of these meta models was process. Process was at the center of everything, because without process, you don't execute. If you have to execute, you need to have a process. So I started humbly 10 years ago, and now I'm ready to share it with the world, what we've done, not just my clients. So my meta model is simple, clean, and basically it continuously be driven by my customers, whom I'm most thankful towards. I have great thanks for my customers. I basically am very customer driven. They're number one for me. They drive me. I'm not a purist. I'm a pragmatist. So my customers drive me. I'm going to give this away to you because it might be useful. This idea of when you go to select and tailor architecture meta models, you've purchased your tools. Any tool will do, but get started with Sparx will be the best. And then come up with your dimensions, the why, what, when, where, and who. Come up with the concept of, what meta model fits the why. The why has been dealt with many years ago with object management group, business model, BMM, business model motivation, OMG. And then you start drilling down into the diagrams you want. So I use this with my clients to tailor. Tailoring a framework, it never comes off the shelf the way it should be. It could be a beautiful suit. If it's too small or too large, it's not going to work for you. And then people will reject it. Usually, most people are trying on the Togaf suit that's way too large. Very expensive, way too large. So we got to make it project ready, immediately available. We've got to deliver the architecture office, which I've helped set up, from my customers brought me in. Help set up many organizations. They have to deliver in less than 6 months. You don't get 2 years, never. That's not in my market. So model driven, what is the Togaf? What is model driven? Well, model driven, if those of you who are really advanced, like Phil Chudley, Terry Merriman, and Garrett Belkins and others, know that this is where I want to control my model. My clients want to control the model. They don't want people to go in and add 50 different diagram types and hundreds of different tag values. And then they also want to control the ribbon. In 2015, Sparx added perspectives, which was brilliant. The concept of being able to control the ribbon people see, being able to control the diagrams, and locking them in as an architect. Because these plugins are great, but you need to tailor and select what you really need to build. You need to narrow it down. So I created a bunch of role-based toolkits, which many of them are replications of current things like mind mapping and others are all in those toolkits. We don't want people to have to go all over the model. So architecture vision. So that's setting the stage about what the preliminary phase is. It's only done once. It's never done again. I give the value add to my clients by saying, well, wouldn't you like to just start from a pattern that's ready to roll in your next project, and then you can modify it over the years? So what about architecture vision? Well, organizations with architects, which, by the way, architects are under fire in North America. Nobody wants them. They say no all the time. There's two kinds of architects in my mind, the ones that live in a glass house, and then there's the other architects, which is the new breed I'm happy to work with, which are really, let's get it done. And so the faster you begin to code when starting a new project, the longer your project will take. Some agile people are going back to code and fix. There is a disciplined agile, but there's also, and Scott Ambler is the founder of the disciplined agile, which was Agile UP in 2001. I've been a follower of his for years. And you might want to check in with Scott Ambler. He's really got a bright view of the world. And the disciplined agile is now being certified by the PMI group. So with all these difficulties and people messing up, because there's a lot of messing up, there are people that are doing it right. Sad to say I'm under NDA, so every time I do a marketing campaign, it goes to legal and we can't share things. So the 4 pillars of growth for us are customer value analysis. Do you know your customer? And Alibaba, who's a socialist country, communist country, his priorities are first of his employees. Well, guess what? All the people today who treat their employees well, Amazon in Seattle, I have friends that work there, and Microsoft, they treat their employees so well. You should go to the Amazon campus or go to the Microsoft campus someday, or down in Silicon Valley. Your employees are number one. Happy employees create really good customers because we know when you're suffering, we know when you're doing good. Don't work for the stakeholder. Jeff Bezos, he basically said, anyone who doesn't follow my rules, he was a programmer at one time, will be fired. If you hard code an API, you're fired. So the theory of open REST API, open standards, there's a whole book you could write about this. The third pillar here is process management. How well do you take care of your process? You know, if you can't describe what you do as a process, you don't know what you're doing. And then, of course, the person who influenced me the greatest, because I had a boss that got me into it, Six Sigma and SIPOC in 1995, I was really blessed in that regard, is basically he's an engineer. He converted an engineering company, which are highly silo-oriented thinkers, to somebody who's going to embrace a global view of information and knowledge management. Operational excellence. Don't be perfect. Go for operational excellence. Couple of warnings and lessons I've learned is CIO Insight in Frankfurt, Germany. 68% of CIOs agree that agile teams require more architects. Not get rid of all the BAs, not get rid of everybody in between. And most business people don't have the time to sit every morning at 15 minutes to a scrum. Architecture vision, I'm totally agile since 1997. I've been most likely agile since 95 when I first discovered Barry Boehm. And I'm really happy to see Doug's book written about Barry Boehm and Doug Rosenberg about their approach. So let's go into architecture vision. Established stakeholders and concerns. I'm going to go through this quickly. Again, all of these shots are from EA, the MDG called A1 MDG. Confirm and elaborate goals, define in-scope capabilities. This is all part of Togaf theory. You can use this as a simple pattern, but I can't cover it all. Business architecture and principles, business scenarios, and then I'm a big fan, especially because the North American market's way more visual, of using PowerPoint, and this is all in Sparx. So people have resonated saying, oh, I didn't know we could use Sparx to communicate PowerPoint, because PowerPoint is the #1 communication technique in the boardrooms of North America, in the military, in all this boardrooms. And as a CIO, I've been in many boardrooms and I've seen the psychology, I've seen the games, I've seen how they communicate. Very busy people that I serve have 28,000 unread emails in their in-basket. How can you get their attention? So if you're not getting responses back on your marketing, my toolbox has all of these building blocks in it. So it's capability, business scenario, business unit. I started this way before Archimate came along. And Archimate's a great modeling tool for IT architects, but not for business architects and not business modelers. You can't bring it in the boardroom. So you need to establish a communication plan. Let's go in. Let's go into Prolaborate. Let's go in to see Prolaborate. That's why we're here. So here's a view of the Prolaborate dashboard I built. And I kept it simple for the demo. I can only reveal so much of this migration project, but it was ideal experience for me. Let me get this thing out of the way. To do with this. Oh, now the screen didn't go away. So the architecture vision, so your dashboards, you can create many, many dashboards. And I won't go into learning all of those things. But this is what the user sees on a browser or a phone or an iPad. This is not, and this is mostly my audience are mostly people who are PMs, CEOs, CIOs, business analysts, business architects. You know, I'm dragging Sparx up into that world as tight as I can, because that's where it really will pay off when you get leadership buying into your model and using business intelligence and things they need to use. So again, architecture vision, package. They can go through by doing that if you choose. I have the architecture vision package, and in it I've got all the management stuff they need so they can present it in the boardroom. This is their operational excellence. These are the goals of the architecture vision. Develop innovative business models, talent, improves business agility, manage IT for strategic advantage, prevent cyber security. These are the goals and drivers that will take us deeper into the architecture. What are the guiding principles? Again, these come from the three amigos of business architecture in Sparx, in Prolaborate. You can pick any one of them and you can read the definitions, and I can start a conversation. And as you see here, there's a conversation been started around the business knowledge. I've started a conversation for people. What I love about Prolaborate, is I can literally send an email to anyone. I can share with hundreds of readers who don't have Prolaborate as readers. I get out of this box of just, and also I don't have to, I can just share a piece of the model. I can also go even deeper. I can actually go right down to the tag value level. I can go into the attributes of every element, and I can start looking at all of the tag values like status of validation or system of record or whatever tag values you have. So you can finely dice the model down to the tag value. That means you get good data, and eventually using Power BI, I can generate really good reports out into Prolaborate. Target objectives, what does success look like? And I basically put in a diagram that looks like the success document. They can double click on it and read it. I believe there's a feature coming up, or I missed it shortly, where you can link a document directly, like a SharePoint. Business scenarios, in-scope capabilities. This is really important in the architecture vision. Which capabilities are going to be in scope? And of course, you can heat map them. Okay, we'll cover that shortly a bit more. Communication plan. So you got a $20 million transformation, and you're not going to communicate with people. You need to communicate with people. And today, you know, since the Second World War, we haven't had problems. In the last 2 years, we're going through unprecedented worldwide upheaval, and I'm sure it's not going to end now. And then we've got a so we've got all of these good things going on. So let me go back to, let's see if I go to home. Yeah, there we go. So I can actually, during some phase, I can start showing up the capability roadmap. Lovely tool, simple to use. Prolaborate is so easy to use. I've set up 5 sites and clients so far. I wish it had been more, but I think it's going to grow more. People don't quite understand what Prolaborate does sometimes. Very rapid to simple up with less training than I ever believed. I just give them hand-holding. Nobody wants training anymore, right? Since Google came along, we're all Google experts. We don't need to have training. So we have the collaboration model, problematic, what the start and end dates are. Very simple, but you have to think of this way before you ever do Prolaborate. You need a good model, a good framework, and a well thought out MDG that gives you the intelligence you need. So going back to the slides. Right. Business architecture. Architecture vision is done one iteration. It's basically sets the stage, sometimes project conception document. Now, an architecture vision can drive out hundreds of projects. So this is before project management. This is really, you know, the concept of project by project by project is a broken concept. You need to take a holistic view in Togaf. We do, where we say, well, what do you really want to get? What are the 12 pages of what leadership wants, so we can align everything else to it? The business architect simply takes the vision, he maybe helps them build the vision, maybe writes it, and then essentially, with the PM, perhaps depending on how strategic their PMs are, and then basically they frame it. So business architecture is about framing. In fact, all of Togaf is framing. It's not about doing the work. It's not about coding. It's not about design. It's called architecture. It's planning. It should be done in less than a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. We cannot afford to slow down. But however, you can't build the plane when it's flying. That people are still trying to figure that one out. So let's go into business architecture. Here's the Togaf steps, if you're interested in becoming Togaf aware. It follows a circle, but it looks like waterfall. It's not. There's a whole agile approach to Togaf. It was written there 2009 when I first studied it. So agile is a part of everything as far as, but you can actually architect agility. you may not be able, you can architect agile systems, you may not be able to do certain things in daily stand-ups because there's a certain amount of stuff you do at the planning level. So this is all about planning. We're going to look at a couple areas here under the business model. This is where I see Sparx shining for my world, is the business model of business architecture and leadership buy-in. So when I first looked at Togaf, I liked it. However, it had no business model, no business architecture. To this day, their meta model is very low on business architecture. And so I got involved deeply in the beginning with the best group in the country, is Business Architecture Guild. And they have a very sound idea of what a business architecture is. So all of my meta models are built on the Business Architecture Guild, and my toolkits are all business architecture driven. Because I've been business modeling since 1989, so I'm a bit of a purist, unfortunately. The business architecture role, here's my toolkit, business architecture role, here's all the diagrams. You can add or select or delete, and more anytime people want a new one or coming along. It's all written in UML. It's all highly respectful of UML. I became UML certified, first studied UML in 1997. And I adopted it instantly. How can I share stakeholder concerns? How can I collaborate with process owners? How can I share my business capabilities with leadership? Because being stuck in a model is great, but you need to liberate it using Prolaborate. Business architects all know, this comes out of Forrester, right? We all know that there's two views of architecture. There's strategy can drive capability, and process you can do both. Won't go into this slide. It's very important though. So I'm only going to cover the nouns and the verbs. So in business architecture, the noun world is capability and the verb world is process, value chain, value stream, others. Moving along. I like reuse catalogs. Here's a capability catalog. The Business Architecture Guild has hundreds. If you join them, $100 a year, I think, 120. You can actually download all of their capability, like banking capability, whatever business model you're in. A person who influenced me greatly while he was at Wells Fargo Bank, and I worked with them in 2005, was Charles Betts. He wrote a book on the practice. This book is still an amazing book, and I want to push the concept of seeing IT as a business. And he's now with Forrester, so I want to leave that with you. You can do heat map assessments, okay, so we can do that easily. Capability-based planning, we looked at that. Business knowledge blueprints. Well, I'm gonna, in the sake of time and coverage, I'm gonna miss this for now. But I've been very fortunate to work with Ronald Ross, who is the founder of Business Rules, father of Business Rules. His theory, and he's been doing this for 30 years, is a structured business vocabulary is critical for business model communication. Every capability you go into, if you go into an ICU, or if you go into a bank, or you go into an insurance company or military, they have a language. And the sooner you learn their language, this is called a concept model. It's not a data model. It's a semantic terminology model. It's extremely precise. It talks about terms. It talks about verbs. It seems complicated at the beginning, but if you ever didn't do well in grammar in high school and you struggled with it, it's a visual verbal diagramming. So if you describe things really, really well and word them well, it helps communication massively with people you don't know what they do. And it also helps a lot with AI, because as we move to AI, if you don't have well-defined terms, AI is not going to work. It's just a joke. We have process value stream. The Pentagon's done some great work. They've taken it real seriously. If you watch the documentaries on how they came up with the vaccines years ago, they challenged DARPA to come up with a vaccine in 30 days. And that's why America was so fast to get the vaccines out, because the Pentagon, which ran the entire process, really does Togaf well. So here's what they use as the management concept. Everyone can understand where you fit in with this value stream, value chain. So let's go and take a look at requirements management. Then I'm going to go, yeah, I don't think, well, there could be time. Yeah, let's do that real quickly. Yeah, let's see if we do that. So I set up a demo here on using the concept model. So I have a concept model in here, and you can see all these things are terms. Business leaders don't like stereotypes in their browser. You know, that's a kiss of death. You'll never work with them again. Oh, your diagram looks great, but you'll never talk to them again. So I took all these building blocks, because we have to make modeling playful for people who are not in the model. And of course, this can go all the way into Archimate, into UML software code. None of these is against Archimate or against UML software coding. The toolkit is there, and you drag in a term. And in this case, I think this is the semantic that we have when you talk about business motivation model. This is when we talk about vision and mission and strategy and goal and objective. Business unit, what the hell is that? What's a business capability? Well, I can double click on it. Somewhere it's got a definition. And if you look on the tag values, A1 tag values, it has this definition source like Webster. These are all customized for. Now, Ronald Ross is not a tool endorser. He will use any tool he can. He's tools neutral. He's a methodologist. But of course, we have a lot of customers. He has some customers with Sparx, so there we went and built it. Now, if I have a term defined, well, what does that do? Okay, that's great. I love this feature in Sparx. They went to special effort to work with Ronald and Gladys on this one, and out of it came the concept of a diagram type called a glossary list item type. So if I drag anything into that diagram type, business capability, and drag it in. Oops, I better not do that yet. Hang on. Right. Go to glossary view. You'll see now there's only a term. Definition of what a term is. There's a definition of what science is, which is an important thing. Being data-driven and science-driven is not a bad thing. Okay, you see there's nothing in here. And of course, this is the name of the package. Ronald calls them neighborhoods. I tend to sort by capability. So a capability will have a glossary because finance people talk differently than HR people and so on and so forth. Programmers talk differently than data modelers. So basically, if I drag into this diagram here, an empty diagram called a glossary item list diagram, the feature is amazing. I drag this in and drop it. And boom, it's now in my glossary. I love this feature here where we have a specification. It's one of my favorite new features in Sparx too. Is if I have it so I can see everything at one shot, and I can drag in tag values or whatever I want to add. Clients love it. They love this view if they're list oriented. Then I go back to publish glossary, and I go look at the glossary, and you'll see now, oh God, what happened? Business capabilities in. You can have a glossary management, you can lock it down, you can have definitions. Now, even better than that, the moment you use a word in your model, as you all know, you'll see the glossary hover over up here. Let's go back to requirements management briefly, and then we'll end with all the great stuff in the application cloud migration project that we did. Requirements management. No matter how many times in the 40 years I've worked in our industry, people have tried to kill requirements. They keep trying to get rid of them. Even Microsoft tried to get rid of UML, then they finally joined it. The industry is always driven by industry concerns. Requirements management. We need to align architecture requirements to DevSecOps, and this is the really important part, is how do we unite the speed of DevSecOps, because we've made programmers so efficient today with the beautiful tools we have in Microsoft and Jira. I mean, we've automated programmers like you've never seen. What we're trying to do now in our industry is automate the business modelers. So we can have VAs are still using spreadsheets and Visio and Word. And my business in the last 7 years has been migrating hundreds and hundreds of VA organizations to Sparx if they're introduced simply, because as we all know, it's not what people say about you, it's what they whisper. Everybody thinks it's ugly, it's horrible, and they leave it in 5 minutes and they buy some tool that looks fun and simple, like Lucid Charts or some other, and that happens daily. But we're having people now move away in requirements management. We need to automate these people. Project managers, I have a project manager toolkit based on disciplined agile approach, which encompasses all of them. Which applications are impacted? Have you ever been on a project where other projects are impacting you and you don't know it? Well, do it in Sparx, do it in Prolaborate, do it in Enterprise Architect. How do we align? The biggest thing is aligning the value chain of a architecture planning to design and coding. So I see three worlds. There's visionary, there's architecture, there's design, and there's build. And build is DevSecOps, which is extremely important these days, as we know. How do I manage? Because everyone's going to code. I'm working with the Wellington Council. I think I'm allowed to say that in Wellington, New Zealand. They're actually a brilliant man there is written a paper, a lawyer, on using doing building codes inspections as decision model tools in Enterprise Architect. So that you can have building codes, people inspect buildings, and you see by all the varying people on our presentations, people are using Sparx for everything: air traffic control, oil exploration, science, math. I love the new math features we've got now. How do I manage technical risk? Nobody seems to care about the risk of doing the wrong thing. Which projects deliver the highest value and lowest risk? A project manager has to be ready to be fired because of saying the unpopular thing and move on to another job. A project manager that doesn't put their job on the line is not a project manager or an architect. Well, architects are different. We are influencers, not so much controllers. Business analysts, role-based stencils. How can I share the process models? How can I verify the user stories? All of this in Prolaborate, which I'm going to jump into. People are really confused about what requirements are. Sparx does a brilliant job on that, as we know, and it's got massive traceability. Watch Ian Mitchell, Master of Traceability and Enterprise Architect in England, in Wales, I should say. Sprint planning, been doing this for 20-some years. Looks like a use case model. It's user stories or use case. I don't care which one you use. They can convert in Sparx. I can convert a use case to a user story back and forth. And I don't have a problem there. We can do Kanban. I work with David Anderson, Mr. Kanban, in Sparx quite well. You can have a storyboard with a user story or use case. We don't care. Right click. It's still the same thing. You know, as a patient, I require access to primary care. This is a use case converted to an information view. Beautiful features. And my toolkits keep acceptance criteria and decision statements, because you have to make log decisions in your knowledge model. Also, in Sparx, we can do, in Enterprise Architect, we can really do the any user modeling, UI dialogues, which helps debug requirements. Want to call out Doug Rosenberg again, brilliant man. Watch his session, follow his practice like I do. When you get into DevSecOps in that world. In Prolaborate, I can also tie in DevSecOps. I can look at the entire thing as a neutral tool, not as the tool Microsoft wants you to use or Jira wants you to use, which are not all really collaboration tools, but we know that, we hear that. What is the burn down rate? You can do that easily. I've been doing that since 2005 with Visual Studio, or they used to call it then. Information systems architecture, which is where I'm going to spend the rest of my time, and we're going to do the last 15 minutes of demo. What are the 2-year application investment roadmap? What applications don't pass the health checks? I was highly influenced by a really brilliant CIO I met, and he asked all the tough questions, and I just loved the questions because I'd been in the boardroom, and he wanted to go back to the boardroom and basically show that architecture is strategic, which it is. And we're still fighting that battle. This is called a RAG report in the UK. It's red, amber, green. In the United States and Canada, we call it red, yellow, green. And this is if you put all your projects in Sparx, which I highly recommend, then you can actually put the size of the bubble represents the budget. The color code represents the health check. And with Sparx, with Enterprise Architect and Prolaborate, we can build tag values that calculate the health check of a project, calculate the health check of an application, for portfolio management and also help you with your investment roadmaps. Application architecture toolkit, very simple. I keep it simple. Business architecture is highly complex. It's far more complicated than software engineering, data modeling, and application architecture. Having done that for 40-some years, business architecture can be really difficult. So here's this. They're doing 2 phases in this project. We're doing first phase is Microsoft Azure, and the second phase is AWS. And this is where I use what I want to plug is the new Sparx AWS and Azure image library, a godsend. And I'll show you a quick demo of how that works too, if you haven't used it. So this is more for the, it's called architecture overview diagram. It's the PowerPoint or the thing you put on the wall, so people have some view of what you're looking at. We discovered the hard way that Azure is really great for office automation and productivity, and it will really blow your mind what it can do. And they're doing amazing things at Microsoft. But when you're looking at real production systems for Prolaborate, you need to go Amazon AWS. The AWS platform is far, far superior for doing heavy duty, large scale. And most of my clients are medium to large scale, massive organizations. So they need to scale. A tool that won't scale can't work. So we're going to do all of our heavy migration and loading on the applications one at a time on AWS. Our productivity tools will come in the Azure space. So here's the as-is view. I'm going to come back to this in a second. Here's the to-be view. I ran the gap analysis in Sparx, and I was able to generate out the application roadmap, and also was able to, using the relationship matrix, which still needs a few tweaks, unfortunately, is that you have to export it to a spreadsheet. It doesn't do this well in Sparx currently in Enterprise Architect, and something I've been concerned about for years. I did this all with a gap analysis using a relationship matrix in Sparx, the overlays, so I can go back to people and say, what are you going to invest and divest? And by the way, how much is each one going to cost? And by the way, wouldn't you like to generate out a costing price budget for that project? Yes, and we can do that. We've been doing that for many years. There's a business footprint diagram a la Archimate, different flavor of Archimate. And then here's a what's called a solution building block. The green things are capabilities, and the components are solution building block, solution SBB systems. Business people like this because they can read, oh, that's a capability. Oh, and I don't know what that is. I might not know what a system or a building block is. So this came out of me from one of my major clients. All these come from clients that I built for them. We also, what we love is the Azure Security Risk Detection. Microsoft, most of us are now, there's a new standard out to basically do cyber detection automatically, and there's the standards out there. There's a whole practitioner, Patrick Simon is a world leader working with Microsoft on how to do automated risk detection, and we're using Sparx in the background play areas to do that. So now having done that, let's go to the last part of the demo of all of this stuff, because this is where most people live in the audience that we have currently, I'm sure. So if I go into my project management and I go into my phase 1, because I can't release a lot of this stuff because it's proprietary to the company I served. Here's the architect. Here's the one I built for the security pattern. No, that isn't it. I hope I got it. Here's the one I'm looking at, I think. So if I have this library, it all comes from the new image library. And I go to my reuse catalogs, and I find my Azure risk library, and I go in here and find DevSecOps. Let's do this one. And I drag it in. It says, oh, you want to use the image? Oh, what would you like to classify it as? So if you're using an MDG, Archimate or mine or others, you can classify it to an SBB system or whatever you had, whatever story type, and you can do save. Now when it comes out, it hides the image. That's no big deal. I can unhide it. And now you know, so now you can use this, and it picks up your MDG and uses all of your quick linkers. So that's a beautiful, for Amazon people and Azure. And as we know, Amazon's having a big trouble right now with having trained architects. They're really struggling with that, finding, the adoption of cloud is made difficult by not having enough resources. The last place I want
Yes.
to show you before we go to
Sorry,
Prolaborate.
sorry to interrupt, Ramsay. So we are just nearing the time. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left for the
Okay,
next session. Yeah.
thank you so
Thank you.
much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you can just finish it off, and so that I can take it over.
Yep. The as is here. I got two more things to show you. Now, this, you don't see it, but if I turn on the properties and I turn on, I show relationships, I hide them for presentation reasons. You'll see I've already established relationships between the capabilities. The capabilities were heat mapped, and we don't have cyber security. That seems to be a huge area in Sparx growth right now, is the whole cyber security model. And then I do my as is. I can do the same there. I have my as is and my to be, and then I can generate out my costing algorithm. So the last thing I want to end with on the presentation is I want to go back to Prolaborate and show you the Sparx model. I'm going to show you back what we did in the area that we looked at in the application architecture, the migration phase 1, and the application architecture here. I can now communicate the to be, because I've allowed them to do it. I've allowed you to see these things. So you can go in and see the to be model, and you can see the capability roadmap. And so I've got the phase 1, phase 2, application rationalization roadmap. And here's all the elements I'm using in my model, my components, which in architecture are called solution building blocks in Togaf. What else didn't I cover that I really wanted to cover in my 3 minutes? Yeah, I covered a lot of stuff. That's about it. That's about all I can cover. But please stay tuned for the team session afterwards, or reach out to me after the session. Oh yeah, here's the last thing I want to end on, is just showing the simplicity of your application roadmap. To which do you invest in, what are you divesting, what are you migrating, and what are you tolerating in your migration plan. And this can be communicated with all players outside of the what I call the serious modelers, which are the 4% of the world. And then you've got all of the great other people, more users who need to use your models, and Prolaborate has liberated that. So thank you very much for listening. Reach out to me later. Connect with me on LinkedIn if anything is useful. And you can request another demo presentation at your leisure later on. Thank you so much, Nizam and team, and Sparx and Sparx Systems.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Ramsay, for a brief introduction. And you started with the introduction, and the session is pretty improvised, and very advanced, where the attendees hope they got a better insight. Okay, so let's see. And with the upcoming sessions, we'll be able to get in touch, and also with regards to your queries, and with regards to if you want to know more. Okay, so Ramsay is still here. Only this presentation is stopped, but he is still on his Teams. Okay, so you can just get in touch with him on the Teams, with the dedicated Teams channel, which is posted on the link. Okay, so if you're still having any difficulties, you can reach us on registrations at eaglobalsummit.com. Okay, so that we will be able to help you out. And thank you so much, and thanks once again, each and everyone. I'm looking forward to you with hosting all the wonderful session in the upcoming summit shortly. Okay, and special mention, thanks to Ramsay for a perfect and more imperative session on this. Thank you.